Uh, Welcome everyone. This is December 8th. This is the bi-weekly Kids Infra meetings, and this is gonna be the last meeting of the year. So I just want to remind to everyone that this meeting is under the code of conduct. So I will invite everyone to be kind to each other. And the one thing I want to do is keep the billing uh, review this time because I want to basically do some kind of retro session. I wanted to do a retro session today, but Aaron is absent for personal reasons, so I will do the annual retro of the billing report next year. Also, a retro of the year in the first meeting of next year. So I think I'm gonna skip the billing review today, which means we do we have any AI review from last time? I don't recall we had something to do. Yeah, I don't see any AI that need to be addressed. Okay, so first person would be EB.
All right, well, I'm unmute and took a little eggs. So this is when you put the olive oil on the plate. I'm kidding. We finally got the kept at least starting the conversation with the people in the in SIG release engineering community, and it was greatly appreciated to get that conversation. It's been interesting that they want to own the kept, which is great. And I don't have an opinion either way because we'll be working on it with whoever owns it. But I know that it's also going to be heavily integrated with this team as well. One second, and I think that the decision for the technical things will be more driven by what the policy is from the community side, but there's also some super simple ways forward. So we can either go through the KEP as it is and kind of talk about the feedback we got from SIG release engineering, but I'd also like to hear from any easy path things that any vendors might have for streamlining that. I think the one of the main flips was, do we want to have the community own the buckets and push to them as far as the curation, or do we want to do sort of pass through caching type thing as far as the super high level without talking about specifics? And the general feedback I got from some of the people on the call was it feels like we want to have those buckets be owned by the community through donations or whatever, so that we can see and feel super confident those artifacts are there. But then there's also the configuring the caching part is also a lot simpler. The KEP itself kind of splits into those the two pieces of how do we promote, and I think the process there's probably updating the tooling and probably the folks at II, against Caleb in particular, pairing heavily with Stephen Augustus, because there's not a lot of people with expert in that code base, and we need more. So I'm going to voluntold Caleb back here on that regard from that side, but also open to other mechanisms like I think Aaron had recommended. Maybe we just have an external syncer that looks at the existing buckets and does that constant syncing separately. So anyway, that's the thing. Do we want to go through the KEP itself? It pretty much says in general what I've just spoken, but definitely look for feedback to add some clarity. More user stories, I think. Arnaud had pointed out, what is it if they're not on a cloud? And so I think that clarity comes from just more and more user stories to make sure what does it feel like for someone who's not at that cloud, not at a cloud provider and wanting to get access to those artifacts. And it probably needs to not necessarily always fall back to Google. It might be that we round robin that or whatever with our solution, so that it's actually distributing the base load of the community across it, not just the stuff from that provider, because then that's kind of just taking care of your own customers and not taking care of the community. So anyway, that's my stuff, my mic. So I'm going to set it down and let someone else go. Oh, I forgot the sunny side up part. There we go.
Yeah, probably I can summarize a little bit some of the discussion that went on afterwards after we discussed on the last release engineering meeting. So ultimately, we think it's going to be more our concerns from SIG release engineering side are going to be more depending on the actual implementation that the distribution takes. If the way we see it is that if we are going to have community-owned buckets on other providers, we feel it's like it falls under our responsibility to make sure that the artifacts that end up in those buckets are pushed and verified, and the integrity and access to those should be controlled by SIG release. It's part of we think it's important because we think it's important to define a uniform policy from source to release artifact that actually can cover all of the artifacts and wherever they end up living. So depending on which way the distribution efforts take, so if it's more of a proxy, then things are easier on the policy side, I think. We honestly would prefer to make sure that we have consistent artifacts in the buckets and basically having them as deeper as control down to the primitive. So I would be concerned to have, for example, a proxying effort where it lacks transparency. I would prefer to have a bucket where we can actually go and attest to the integrity of the artifacts that are living in there. But if in the end proxying is the chosen way to go, we're also fine with it. But just wanted to let you know what we discussed after the meeting that day.
So sorry, I joined a couple minutes late. Hippie, I want to know what it is that you're cooking there because it looks really good. Are we primarily discussing right now? Oh, I'm sorry, I jumped on the hands. Maybe I'm sorry, Eddie. Are we discussing container images primarily, which have the nice property of being sort of self-verifiable by hash, or are we talking about the other sorts of artifacts when it comes to SIG release in particular?
I think all kinds of artifacts, from container images, binaries, even up to the documents themselves.
So we have to be careful here because the KEP only cover containers images. Because I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, my intention in that's the original title was actually artifacts in general. And I think we just haven't had the user stories and the clarity added there. We can rip that off into another KEP, but because the whole process is intertwined and multi-sig and all of this, it felt like if we're gonna split it off, it should be this should be the umbrella KEP if that makes sense. And we can spin that off with more clarity as a thing, but this should encompass all binary artifacts produced by Kubernetes, controlled by release engineering, and served up by SIG K8s Infra, and making sure that and SIG, I think SIG Contrib-X also has a bit of, like, as far as the people in play and how that handles his hold and making sure the manuals are there. Like, I think it's a 3 SIG party that should go beyond just the container images. Is my thoughts.
Well, I think my main concern is, are we trying to solving a financial problem, or are we using this KEP to open the door to work on something different? Because the initial intent of this effort is to basically reduce the cost burden of the container image, the distribution of the container images. That was the initial intent. But now if we want to basically extend that solution to all the artifact produced by the community, it's a different conversation. So I just want to clarify things about what do we want to cover. Tim, I feel like you have a question. And I will just have Hedy because Hedy has his hand.
We can keep going on that chain. I want to ask Adolfo a few questions while we had him here. So one of the big questions that we brought up was, sure, people can give us an endpoint or a bucket or something, right? But do we have any requirements around resources, right? Like if there's a cloud or some kind of provider out there that wants us to publish artifacts into their bucket, do they give, do they do anything beyond funding? Do they have to provide like a point of contact, like an account manager, or someone to call if things break? Do we want like people on call for that kind of stuff? Do we want to have a few people on SIG release, learn how every cloud works? And did you think about that at all?
So another area I'd like to just specify where we think our responsibility ends. So we think our responsibility goes all the way up to publishing the artifacts and getting them ready for distribution. And afterwards, making sure that things are available, things are the building and all of that sort of thing. We don't feel it falls under our umbrella. Then again, that question went down to the actual implementation. If we end up with a managed service, we don't expect to have, we expect full support from whoever is providing that service. But then you could envision a totally different way of for example, we could envision a theoretical distribution method where we could actually have clusters with hardware in them at the edges that we're interested in. Then it would fall under the community side. So I think that discussion is more once we decide on a specific implementation.
So let's go for Tim.
So I think my opinion, we can slice this in multiple dimensions. On the one dimension, we have the container images versus other binary artifacts. I think we need to do both, but I do think we can solve them independently, or at least incrementally. Container images feel like they're much easier to solve because of the self-verifying nature. And we proof of concepted a couple of ways to tackle that, right? The bigger question is policy, and how do we onboard a new mirror, and how do we make sure that the mirrors are happy and healthy, and what are the principles by which we say yes to one mirror and no to another, and how many mirrors do we expect to have over time? Like, honestly, if it's more than a half dozen, I'll be shocked. And do we want, I think the bigger question that I forget who asked, but like, what transparency level do we want for that, right? What are we willing to put up with? Because I think we could probably onboard more if we're willing to have less transparency. And we as a community need to make that decision, right? Those are the issues on my mind. Yes, it's a financial thing, Arnaud, but it's also a what is the right thing to do here for the sustenance of the community over the long term, right? It's not purely about not hitting our budget this month, right? Because everybody saw that we hit it last month. That was exciting. Getting those emails that says you're at 90% of your budget, little hair raising. So anyway, the way I see it is that, and I would love to tackle it incrementally. The hardest issues here are not the technical issues. They are the social and policy issues, in my opinion.
Yeah,
I-
that's definitely what we've been saying for a while now, is that the harder part is going to be figuring out the policy for this. Though I do disagree, Tim. I think the budget is a big concern because we're blocked on migrating more things to the community-owned PROW stuff because we are so close to our budget as it is.
So are we willing then to take shortcuts, right? And are those shortcuts short-term or long-term? I have an observation that short-term shortcuts tend to be forever shortcuts. And so we should be ready if we're going to take shortcuts that we just live with that.
My basically intent for next year is to stop doing the migration and basically focus on addressing the cost burden. I have my own opinion about the global solution for this, but the problem is I have even an idea, some kind of close to what was said in the release engineering meeting, but I don't have enough data or I need advice from people inside Google. So what I did, and you know, Tim, is basically I started to have conversation with people inside Google about how we can basically solve that, because I feel like the solution is technically very simple to do, but I'm not sure if this is going to solve the problem. I think that's my main concern. So I'm happy we have kept talking about how we have a policy about mirroring, but I also think there are other options that doesn't involve mirroring or basically some kind of policy for distribution. But I'm happy we have a cap for this. So the one thing I basically kind of expect, because we have a lot of conversation about this, is I think Aaron says something like that in the past, is not some kind of design talk about the different options for every option we have, because basically we need to do some kind of implementation, but we also need to make sure we do things the right way. So I also expect in these caps a design doc for the different solution we want to test or present.
I think some of the solution stuff that also, just to kind of back up and respond to that, is that the II and the team are here as a CNCF resource to help to orchestrate that multi-cloud thing. And we have gathered input from the community on at least 5 different solutions, and they're listed at the bottom of the cap. I've intentionally not pulled in a design doc until we get a consensus, because again, it's the people part, not the technical part. That's hard. That's the harder part. So if we can decide on that policy side, I think the design doc for those other pieces will flow quite readily. As far as the fully managed solution, quick thing, or being able to do the buckets, I think from an II and familiarity with DevOps and project and being able to automate that, I don't think the automation part is hard either way either. And we do have the people on staff to have those relationships with the multiple cloud providers. So I don't want us to back off in fear that we don't have the people to do it either. I want us to really focus on what's the best for I think Tim had something earlier about the what is best long-term for our community, because if we can go ahead and make that decision, I don't think it's going to take very long to go either direction.
My one of the things that sticks in my brain is, when it comes to this decision, it's sticky in a people sort of way. Like, if we simply said we'll take opaque mirrors that we don't administer, we don't get the transparency into, then we make the cost of it someone else's problem, right? Like, I'll pick on AWS because Eddie's on my screen. If AWS says we'll run a mirror, right, just redirect all traffic for these IPs to this host, right? Excellent. I can then pretend I don't care how much it costs them, right? On the other hand, I don't get to see anything about what's happening, right? Or very little. If we go the other direction and we say, well, we'll run it, we get the credits. We have this ongoing thing now where we have to secure credits every year, right? I fill this role on the Google side. Does somebody fill this role on the AWS side who agitates and says, hey, remember, it's end of the year. We need to make sure that those credits get renewed, make sure the ball doesn't get dropped, because it happened once and it was a really bad thing. That has a more, I don't know, it feels toilsome in a way. So I'm trying to balance those thoughts.
Yeah, as someone who just spent 6 or 8 months trying to track down a credit renewal for the AWS CNCF account, it was very difficult, right? Like even knowing the right people internally to poke. So I'm with you on that concern. I'm with you in not wanting to take shortcuts. I think, so where I'm struggling is I don't know where the priority lies actually, right? Like, so where I think the priority lies and where I'm trying to put my efforts is seeing budget hitting 90-something% and being like, oh shit, like we're gonna hit that, we're gonna go over our budget, we're gonna run out of money for the year for our credits. Like how important is that? Is that where we should be putting all of our efforts, right? Like how are we weighing the moving to community-owned infrastructure versus keeping the cost down for the CNCF, right? So my thought is like, if the CNCF has to pay $1 out of pocket, like that is awful, right? So that is what I'm prioritizing for.
I wouldn't have categorized it as awful, but it's to be avoided, right? It's a conversation I don't want to have because we shouldn't have to have it. To also play on the like not just figuring out who's responsible for hitting credits, but like over time these things have grown, right? We didn't used to spend $3 million and now we are spending $3 million. So if, again, for example, we own the infrastructure within AWS and we go over that credit limit, does it just stop working? Like, what are we going to do about that, right? So maybe the answer really is opaque is better. And if we get somebody inside of Amazon to say, we'll own the implementation, like what's the interface, right? Give us a sync target, like let's define as a community what our sync protocol is. And you all go sync it. And I don't care how much traffic we send to you, that's your problem. And if you think it's wrong, like if you think we're sending you traffic that we shouldn't be sending you, we can talk about it, right? But otherwise, your problem to deal with. Maybe that's just net simpler. I'm coming around to it.
Another concern. So what sort of opacity would be a concern for us? So, and because there are some methods where we can, if it's regarding artifact integrity, we can some verifications in a kind of black box kind of way. Or what other aspects of opacity? Is it more in the policy side as for spending, or what other concerns are there?
My concern was primarily, well, two things. One, are you serving the right images? And two, should we, the community, have the right to see the information about where we're serving to, right? Now we've set up the PII processes and stuff like that, but should we have the right to anonymize and publish information that says we send 62% of our traffic to this mirror and 38% to that mirror, right? And can we get that without owning the whole thing, right? Like one of the proposals was run everything through a small redirector that we own, right? Well, if we extract the logs of those redirectors, then we can in fact say we redirected this much traffic to this site and that much to the other, right? So maybe that's sufficient. Now, for the verification, again, container images self-verify. For non-container images, I suspect we'd have to have the canonical list of SHAs somewhere that anybody in the world could verify against. And we don't mirror that. We only mirror the content, right? Something like that. Yeah,
that one is, we're heavily invested into that effort currently. It's in release engineering, so that isn't. That's a concern we're already addressing. So that one is already practically taken care of if we can finish the efforts we're planning for 124. And I personally, the redirector was the first one I saw, and I really like that approach. I'm not sure how much testing on that idea has already progressed. Hopefully it's available.
We've proof of concepted it. I have an open question as to whether in the end, how much it actually saves us, because we trade one cost for another, right? We have to serve the redirector somewhere. So we take some cost in order to save some other cost. I have to believe that the cost of the traffic being localized would outweigh the cost of the redirector, but I haven't actually done that math.
Yeah, I would think so too. Yeah.
I mean, for container images or for just binaries and system
Both.
packages.
I
Because
have
it's
to believe
gonna
it's
be-
both.
Because I think it's gonna be kind of impossible to estimate that cost, especially if we basically don't know what kind of traffic we manage locally.
Well, we can look at the logs we've got today, right? Like, Hippie and crew, you've got a ton of the logs data extracted. So we can look at those and say, if we made this change and say we served the redirector from Cloud Run, which was one of the examples that we threw out there, right? Well, each Cloud Run hit costs us X cents, and each gigabyte of data served costs us Y cents. And, does the math work, right? I just don't know what X and Y are and what the coefficients are.
There's definitely going to be quite a large cost savings because it's just headers and redirects, and it's basically 302 redirects for all of that traffic, and we would retain the logs to be able to say how much and where they were coming from as far as us redirecting them to a provider.
Right.
The actual serving of the blobs, the binary blobs themselves, if you will, the shipping containers of the product are being hauled by someone else, but we're the traffic director saying where these things should go. I do think we could estimate it, but I don't know that it's that useful because it's all the blobs. Like, without doing too much math on it, I can say you're going to not cost a lot just to do the redirection, unless Cloud Run stuff is, fairly expensive.
Right. And that's it. Like, I honestly have no idea. I've just never looked. And Cloud Run is just an example, right? We could just do it ourselves too. It's just that Cloud Run was super easy for a proof of concept.
Like run it in all the regions of GCP by this. I think I would prefer go with Cloud Run, because run that binary in all the GCP region is gonna be extremely painful.
We don't need to run it in all. We would just need to run it in a few, right? And honestly, we have the infrastructure for doing that too, right? Like, that's not a huge deal in terms of complexity. We get to own it, right? And so if it falls over, it's us who gets to go figure out why. And that's the less we can do of that, the better off we will be, in my opinion.
I see a hand raised.
Okay. Is that Jim? Oh, because you had your question.
Yeah, just that I don't know what commitments to scrubbing PII there is today, and if it's just a redirect and not a proxy, is there concern about whatever mirrors not following that process?
Well, I don't think we are supposed to collect personal information in that redirect, because we just basically direct the traffic based on your IP address, but we are not supposed to collect that. And even if we collect that, we can basically define a policy about retention. Like, we don't basically say, oh, we keep that information for 30 days.
Yeah. I mean,
well, it's more about making sure anybody else doesn't keep it, right?
Well, we're not going to we're not going to give open access to our logs, right? We're not going to just say, here's all the logs for August, have fun, community world, right? And I don't see how a proxy could ever work in a cost-effective way. So I think we're going to have to just redirect. And if the PII here is the customer's IP address, which I think is really the only piece we're talking about, then that is exposed to the mirrors, but they were accessing a public site anyway, so it seems kosher. This is not my area of expertise, by the way.
I think
Um,
what question might have been is once we do the redirect, those mirrors need to be under some of an obligation to not let those logs out as well, or
Yeah.
to protect
Yes.
that. That's it. I think that the key there is having that as a policy to be part of those logs, that PII is protected because we've set
Yes.
our community that way.
Yeah. No, that's fair. Like part of onboarding a mirror is agreement that you will not publish that information. Right.
exactly.
We still have the issue of health checking and is this mirror happy and healthy? We will not know if a mirror is serving 500s for all the blobs, right? Except people will complain because our redirector will be happily sending people to the dead mirrors, right? Those are the issues that I would like that we need to nail down, right? Is that okay? And I'm not sure we can do better, honestly.
There's a possibility that
I'm sorry. Basically, I would like to conclude that conversation because we are also have different
Oh, yeah.
subjects and we already in the middle of the meeting. So, just to basically close that subject, what's the next step? Are we just basically keeping the conversation in the cap, or I feel like Adolfo, we need to put basically a TLDR of your conversation with the tech lead of SIG release inside the cap, and
Yeah.
and I will leave the rest of the people review the cap and basically drop your comments.
So let's centralize on the cap. The most useful thing that people can do for like phase one is make sure the cap asks all the right questions. So like, does it ask the question of what is the policy for disclosing PII if you're a mirror? I bet it doesn't, because that's a really subtle question, but it should have that somewhere listed in it, right? So let's go through and call out every sort of gotcha we could think about.
Okay, so next subject is Paris. Tim, your hand still raised. I mean, it's okay. So Paris, you next.
Yep. Hey y'all. I have been intently listening to this because I know y'all want to go places, especially be done with the migration. And I'm doing plans for the project. Sorry that I have my mask on too, and you can't see my lips moving. That's probably pretty hard. I have some plans for the project, and I want to make sure that each SIG has sustainable efforts going on, meaning that there's no sub-projects that have just one maintainer. And if there's epics that need to be done, then we hire contractors. Refactors that need to be worked out, then we hire consultants. Whatever needs to be done, we need to get it done. So I wanted to throw this out to this group because if there's an end state that you're desiring, for instance, this migration work to be done, and more people can help us, I'm your gal and I can help you with that. So I would like for us to dream big. For instance, I really think that this group could use a technical program manager to help with prioritization as well as onboarding programs, because I see a lot of contributors come here to help. And unfortunately, they don't get onboarded. So I really think a technical program manager could help this group kind of sustain itself and boost up, because I know how busy the chairs and the tech leads and I think like all of you are. So I just wanted to kind of start that discussion here with you all, is what your needs really are and how we can get you there. So sort of into a dream state. I've shared a document with the leads to this group, and the leads can feel free to share it with you all as well. But it is a list of SIG needs, as well as ideas that we have on how we could fill some of those needs. And please feel free to add anything to Kate's and anything to the K8s Infra section. And like I said, I really would like for us to get a lot of our goals accomplished that have been sitting there, especially tech debt stuff, for a while, that are kind of holding us back to get to the next level. So that's all I kind of wanted to come in here and spark, which is your good ideas for how you would like to take this group and where you want to take this group. And then also, I have been getting a ton of questions about the migration work, especially from the governing board members and things where we're going and proposing some of this budgetary stuff. So I just had some really quick questions about like where you all are with the migration and what either other companies can help out with or what budget could help out with, etc. So it's nice big questions.
I still feel like my prior question, I don't have an answer for in terms of where the priority lies. We've pretty much stalled out on the migration as far as I can tell. I know can probably provide more insight there. But yeah, we have not migrated most of the work, the proud jobs and things to community-owned infrastructure because we've been concerned about the cost and the budget.
So if we're at that dead end, then that just pours all the fuel onto the artifact promo process.
That's been where all of II's efforts kind of shifted. At one
Okay.
point, it was pushback because that was one of our goals for this year was to help with the migration of all the Google stuff off of the Google-owned infra. But I think it was probably about 6 months ago where we found that there was the main need was to get that cost down, and so all of our focus has been trying to get to the point of that KEP coming through with those different solutions and bringing them together, and that's why we're at the KEP point.
So maybe we should agree that this is the only item of forward progress business until we resolve it. Like there is just not much else we can do. We are landlocked.
We're here.
And so this is where the mixed messaging I feel has been coming from. I wish Aaron was here because whenever this kind of comes up, when Aaron's around, Aaron seems to not care very much about the budget, as in putting the effort into the other things, right? So again, I'm not throwing Aaron under the bus or anything, but like from the inside of, you know, the currently Google-owned accounts, I see Tim and I see Aaron, and I feel like I'm getting mixed messages from different folks, and yeah. You muted Tim, sorry.
Yeah, sorry. I think there's a lot on the inside that needs to move to the outside, and it's not clear to me that it will fit even if we moved 90% of the image promotion out, but we can't really even have the conversation. So I realize now that this is more urgent maybe than I had given it attention for. Getting that email that said we're at 90% of our budget really lit a fire under my butt last week or 2 weeks ago. I apologize, I've been a little bit absent. It's been a bit crazy few months. This is the only thing that I will pay attention to from this working group at this point. I will just ignore everything else from now and try to drive us to some decisions.
So what does everybody think about the idea of a technical program manager to help with?
I'm not against the IT. I mean, I'm not against the idea of a technical program manager. The thinking is I don't know what to expect from him, from the person. That's,
yeah,
I don't
want to make somebody into a whip cracker. Although, you know, maybe that's what we need. But I think that's something that tends to happen to TPMs sometimes, and I don't think that's fair to them. So Paris, you tell us how you would like for somebody like that to engage.
Yeah, I think it would be useful. I think it would be useful because I also think it would be sort of a technical writer as well, because I think you all need some further documentation, especially around onboarding new folks, because we have had several folks who want to spend part-time, you know, of their job on K8s Infra, but have said no because they have no idea where the priorities lie and they don't want to spend time working on stuff where they don't necessarily know what's like the hottest thing. And Tim, like you just said, like clearly the artifact stuff is like the hottest stuff, right? But that's like that's super hard for contributors to come in and like pluck off when they don't necessarily know that from the jump. So I feel like a TPM / tech rater could definitely help you all here and alleviate a lot of those burdens from you, so y'all can just do the work. So that's kind of what I see here, is just alleviating this so you all can do the work. And sorry, Perko, you had your hand up. I apologize.
Yeah, I just wanted to share the nice experience. I mean, I don't know, you saw it with Lori when Lori Apple was helping us in SIG release. And it didn't even have to be like a full-time job. And so just the fact of having her for a couple of weeks, inserted in our efforts, making sure goals are aligned and people are doing what they're most productive at, really changed the way we did things. And this was at the end of 2020, I believe. But even the efforts that she put on back then are still kind of guiding some of the work that we're doing today. So it was a really nice experience. I really highly recommend to have a PM like that.
And then Hippie, then y'all could focus really like laser focus on, you know what I mean, on getting that stuff done. And I'm sorry, my mask on because I am smiling under here. Like this isn't like serious.
Okay, so I'm gonna break I think I'm gonna use a question and your question in trying to break down differently. So there are two main subjects about this migration. We have the pro job, we have basically the artifact produced by the community, and we have all the tooling we need to migrate. The pro job should not be migration. The pro job should not be the main responsibility of K8s Infra. This should be the responsibility of the SIG. If I need help about something, I basically need help from steering all the liaison to tell to the other SIG leads that they need to care about that migration. Because what I did is, let's say, 5 to 6 months, it was basically directly working with SIG, trying to basically help them do the migration. The problem is we have over 25 SIGs and I can chase 25 SIGs by myself. So what I did, for example, is basically I asked Signals to task someone and the person is only focused on that migration. I would like to do that for all the SIGs, but I need the SIGs to the SIG leads and technical leads to basically drive that info. So the app doesn't need to come from the outside, but we can have help in the community, and we basically can do the pro job migration in just one milestone. That's one thing. The artifact are basically, the problem is financial, because basically we pay for the container images, and we also need to migrate everything related to system. The problem with that is we don't have the correct solution, because the problem is not technical. It's about it's about policy. Like in the previous conversation, everything is about policy. If we decide to use Miro, that's also another one problem. But in the meantime, until we try to figure out this, we still need to pay for that. So basically, if we need help, we need some kind of extra budget to support let's say the global budget, and basically give us time to do and the migration of the rest of the rest thing at Google, and also the container images. And when those 2 points are done, we can finish the migration by moving everything on by SIG testing. So I don't know if it's clear or something I need basically to clarify. if we basically want if we want to have a technical manager, the technical manager basically at some point need to talk with the other SIG, and it's not the easy task. And like Adolfo say, it's extremely difficult to align people in an open source community because not everyone has the same priorities, and we have personal stuff to deal with and professional stuff also. So basically a TPM is interesting, but we are in the context where it's difficult to align everyone to the same priorities. So that's why I basically the liaison of steering committee to basically go talk to different things and say, oh, you need to make that your priority. So you give room to K8s Infra to work on something else or basically finish that migration.
But it sounds like we now have a priority, right? Like Tim just said that the most important thing is going to be this artifact thing, right? Like, do we put that in stone? Is that like our roadmap? Cool.
I agree with that, but I feel like if this is about money, to be honest, this is about money. If we get extra credit, we don't have to care about for basic maybe 1 to 2 years. But if we
extra credits where, right? Like there's been no request on the Google side to change the 3 million number. If we want to do that, that's a conversation we can have, but it's not one that we have had. If we're moving workloads, other stuff to other places where there are available credits, whether that's AWS or Azure or something else, that's cool. I haven't heard much about that concretely. Or let me put it another way. If we ignore the mirroring problem for 6 more months, then it will not only be a we can't move stuff over conversation, it will be a we need to slow down CI conversation. Because I doubt, given that we're hitting our budget monthly now, I doubt that we will make it through 2022 without dialing something back, because everything's growing organically, right? So at 250,000 a month, we're going to be touching at that $3 million, right? And so like Eddie said, eventually CNCF gets a bill. And if Priyanka has to write a check or something, then we fail.
I think I agree with what Tim said earlier on. This is not just about the money. This is about where Kubernetes is going, the future of Kubernetes is going. And the logical thing is we need to spread the load all over just for sustainability of the project. So I don't think asking for more budget is good for us. Even if they throw us with money, it's not a good thing for the community as a whole. It's time to do this technical work. So that's, and then from a technical project manager point of view, I think that will keep, as exactly as Adolfo said, when they had a technical project manager supporting them, it was really driving the thing in a direction. And if we have a technical project manager for this group, he will pick up these things in between meetings constantly and make sure that it runs in a direction that is helpful for the whole community and not try and save ourselves with more money.
I don't disagree. I'm just saying I don't have big expectation in basically knowing what happened in SIG release. I don't have big expectation about success. I think that's my main concern based on my past experience. I don't say no, we should not have. I'm just saying if we get TPM, how we make him happy, how we make that person happy.
That's right. That's my biggest concern. Thank you, Arno, for expressing it very clearly. How do we make sure that this person isn't miserable with what we're asking them to do?
Because I mean, let's be honest. The TPM is about driving the effort to somewhere. If we are not aligned with the vision defined by that person, we're gonna make that person unhappy for a long time. So I think that's my problem right now is basically if we get the TPM, fine. Someone is interested to basically guide us to the success, but are we sure we also gonna have that person to be success? Because it's not about dealing with this group. It's about dealing with the entire community. And we are all SIG, maybe except James, soon he's gonna be SIG lead of K8s Infra, but most of the people in this call know the burden when it's come to bureaucracy inside the community. So I want to make sure if we bring an external person, we need to be sure the person is happy with us.
Yeah, I mean, I keep going back to when we first started having this conversation in June, right? And we recognized that, you know, AWS was a large portion of that traffic, right? It is a significant cost. And back in June, we were like, okay, like, do we provide a registry endpoint? And like, is that a solution? And we're still in the policy, right? Like that's what this service, again, we're still in the policy. We have unanswered questions. Like if all it takes is we provide a registry for the project to publish into, and that cost drops 50%, like, you know, we've waited 8 months to do that. So
Yeah.
I think we all agree with the problem. We don't have a lot of time to make that decision. So to be concrete, we have 3 months to make the policy done, and we have 3 months to basically decide. 3 months to be sure the solution we choose is going to solve our problem. Let's say, let's break down in, let's see. I want to go first because we have 4 minutes left, 3 minutes left to the end of the meeting. I basically agree with all the points mentioned in the conversation. But the problem is how we're gonna solve that in 6 months is the problem. Everything we talk about is a possible solution, but we need to pick the right one. And we are now out. I don't think we are out of time. That's why I say we should get extra credit, but I don't know how to initiate that conversation with CNCF or Google, of anyone willing to basically get the credit.
We launched the Cloud Native Credits program last year, or this year at the last KubeCon, and we've been having those conversations. That's, you know, what are we engaging with Amazon and a lot of others, and also, you know, coming back around to Google. I don't mind making those asks and having those conversations, and I think that part of the urgency here is just to make sure that we can, as quickly as possible, get to being able to not be afraid to move those other workloads over and start to look at those budget. I echo the priority is to go ahead and get the artifacts over.
Okay. Yeah, we have 2 minutes left to talk about something else. So the last point is gonna be the migration to the new Google group. I added in the string. So basically there's an info to, I see Tim smiling, and because there's an info to basically move to from the public Google Cloud to the Google Cloud for Business owned by the community. So we need to make a decision. Do we want to have just one new mailing list, and also we can migrate the conversation in the former mailing list? Or do we want to have two mailing lists, so we have one for just the meeting and buys and another one for the communication?
Well,
so
and we also need to move all the groups, or do we need to move all the groups that control access to various cloud resources?
No, because it's just the rest of the group are already owned by the domain. Those are managed by GCP. Everything inside the
Okay, sorry, my memory failed.
We're just talking about basically the one in googlegroups.com.
Cool, then that's less scary.
Okay. So we did a check with Aaron and also Bob. So we need to make that decision. I would like to do this in the beginning of the year. I think I don't want to. We are over time now, so I'm gonna shut out email so we can quickly make the decision about how we want to do this. And Jim, I wanted to talk about code search, but we are out of time. I'm sorry.
Yeah, sorry, I've been slacking on that. I've had a lot of other work. I saw your
It's
comments
okay.
though.
Okay. And that was my last point. Anyone has a last point before we finish this meeting?
Well, just from my side, I just wanted to leave the commitment that we, release engineering, are willing to help unblock and make the KEP as fast and make it a reality as fast as we can, and expect all the help that we can give to the effort.
I think what I expect from EP is basically collect all the, basically resume the conversation we had today inside the KEP. So we basically, because we also need to involve different other things, for example, cluster life cycle at some point. So we should basically present all the agreement and disagreement we have and had over the past year. Tim, I need 5 minutes of audience with you after this meeting. Just 5 minutes. That's all I need.
Okay, I can give you 5 minutes unless my phone rings. I'm waiting for a call.
Okay, just 5 minutes. So.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Good conversation today. I will read the KEP. This is my personal promise. I will read that KEP and I will throw some comments in there and I will ask whatever questions I can come up with. And I ask everybody here, spend some time reading the KEP and just try to ask whatever question you think isn't covered in there.
Thanks heaps, everybody. Thanks, Tim. Thanks, Renan.
You, Tim.